Good morning, everyone. It is Coach Candy for Coffee Chats. Happy Monday. How's everybody doing? How was your weekend? Let everybody jump on here in just a minute. Good morning, good morning, good morning. We are going to do a little Monday mindset and jump in and have some pretty rich conversation. For some of you that are jumping on for the first time, good morning, Martha. For some of you jumping on the first time, we are here every morning, 7:30 Central Time. Good morning, Elaine. Having some pretty powerful conversations. Today's going to be a mindset conversation to kick things off for the week. How was everybody's weekend as you guys are jumping on and getting ready for a new week? How you guys doing? Good morning. Good morning. Awesome. Awesome. Did you guys have a good weekend? How was the weekend? It's been a little hot and humid in Houston or in Austin. I feel like it's Houston weather right now. So anyway, give everybody just a moment. Awesome. So today I want to actually have a relatively big conversation. I know we have those conversations on here anyway, but one of the things I've really been kind of carrying it all weekend long is I was going out and looking at some things on social media and realizing just how heavy the energy is. And so I want to have a conversation today about, are you actually contributing to the solution or are you contributing to the problem? And again, this goes back to some of how what you're choosing to put energy into. It's about your language. Good morning, Nilu. And so I want you to think about the opportunity around how you're showing up. And so right now I know there's a lot of things going on that are kind of heavy. Good morning, Deborah. That have been kind of heavy. And like I said, I actually had to get off social media this weekend. It was just, the energy was so intense and it feels really heavy, and it feels like there's a lot of people just pushing and resisting right now. And I know, good morning, Ruth. I know that there is a lot going on right now, and this is not to dismiss any of the major issues that are going on. There's a lot of things that are really triggering people and firing them up and stirring things up in a really massive way. But what I noticed when I was going out, especially on social media, but I've been noticing the conversations, is many of the conversations are playing right into that negative energy, right into the very thing that's triggering people, or right into the space of, what feels like it's violating maybe human rights, or it's violating what you believe is your opportunity, or whatever it might be. And whatever your beliefs are, that's not necessarily what I want to get into. What I want to get into today is whether you're actually being part of the problem or if you're creating an opportunity to be part of the solution. And so I want you to think about for a moment. Good morning, Mario. What's up? I want you to think about for just a moment. Mother Teresa, my brain just went out of whack for a minute. Mother Teresa, think about when she said she would never sign up for an anti-war demonstration. You would never see her participate for an anti-war demonstration. You never see her fight against something that was not something she believed in, not something, because she didn't want to put energy in that space. She said if you invited her to a pro-peace rally, she'd show up every time. And so I want you to think about it, because there's a lot of incredible, full moon is full of energy. Yes, I absolutely agree. Yes, and it was a big full moon. And so for some of you that don't know that, or are feeling a little wonky this week and are feeling like things were getting a little out of whack, I took a lot of time for some self-care this weekend, because there was definitely a lot of energy moving. And so that also plays into why I want to have this conversation this morning, because there was some really big energy this weekend, and the full moon is a lot for purging out stuff for sure. So when I think about that, I want to think about how we're purging that, how we're cleansing, how we're showing up, and be the one to take that energy to the higher level. Absolutely. So think about that. Back to what I was saying around Mother Teresa, and when she talked about she would never show up or participate in an anti-war rally. But a pro-peace rally should show up every time. And so I want you to think about, regardless of your stance on anything that's going on, this isn't to be a big political discussion. That's just not really a space I like to play in. My point is that if something is showing up for you that feels as if it's not right, or if it feels as if it's really intense, or you're like, man, that just doesn't work for me, instead of leaning in and playing into the energy that's really heavy, the energy that is out there, and fighting and being all about why you don't like that leader, or why you don't like that message, or pushing against that, start thinking about how you can drop in and think about what you are for instead. And so think about some of the conversations we had a few weeks ago. Good morning, Yvette. Think about the fact that, do you want to push against what you don't want, Or do you want to open up access to what you really want and move towards that? Because that's a space of more peace and ease and grace, that you can open up some bigger opportunities. And so think about where you're participating in your own energy. And it's been amazing because I have seen a handful of posts that were done extremely well, and people that are stepping forward to share their stories, stepping forward to be more proactive, stepping forward to have a bigger conversation where it's not attacking something, it's not a charge against something. It is a position of, here's where I'm at, and I want to open up a conversation that's more open and loving and compassionate. And I want you to think about, good morning, Terry, where your energy is going. A lot of times we don't even realize that sometimes we're contributing to the problem. And a lot of you know I watch The Secret a lot. And I love that they have this conversation on it, right? It's about the space of what are you putting your energy to? And that's the whole law of attraction. Whatever we put our energy to is going to manifest more of that. And so, and I'd love to hear from you guys as you're jumping on. Good morning, Mateo. I want you guys to really weigh in on this. And like I said, this is not to have a political discussion. This isn't the space to talk about who's on what stance and what they believe. It's more around how you're choosing to show up in that space. This isn't about who's right, who's wrong. This is about big issues that instead of playing into the charged energy. And so I love when they talk about the fact that if you're against a candidate, for example, or if you're against a leader, instead of fighting against that leader, be pro his opponent, right? Be pro for the opportunities that are going to draw those forward. And this weekend, and again, some of it, yes, full moon, I totally agree with you, Ruth. But some of it, if you think about, I went on social media this weekend and it just, and being a deep empath, the energy was really heavy. There's so much fighting right now. There's so much resistance. And I see most of the posts. I see most of the conversations. I see most of the thoughts and discussions are playing into the very energy that people are feeling is violating them, or feeling like it goes against their beliefs, or feeling like it's the space where the resistance is at. And what I'm seeing is most of the things on social media right now are contributing to the problem rather than the solution. And so I hope this is making sense. I really want to have some discussion this morning with all of you, because there is a difference. And like I said, when Mother Teresa says, you won't see me participate in an anti-war, I don't want to talk and focus about war. I want to talk and focus about peace. And so think about the heavy issues that are going on right now. And I am not dismissing any of the conversation that's going on. I think there's some really big conversations to have right now. And I think there's an opportunity. And there is a responsibility for how we choose to show up in that space. And what's happening is most people are charging the issue instead of trying to find a solution. There's a lack of responsibility. There's a lack of what is it I want to move towards and open up. And it's just this push and fight. And I've seen people that I deeply admire get into this really challenged space where it's just like this energy is just moving, and so more of what they don't want just seems to keep showing up. And so let me see what some of you guys are saying. Sometimes finding a starting point, Ruth, sometimes finding a starting point for a conversation and being open to learning the other point of view. It's not an argument, it's a conversation. Yes. And inside that conversation, and I love that you said that, Ruth, one of the things I want you to consider is the opportunity to listen for understanding. What happens, especially when there's the charged issues, right? Especially when there's something that's triggering us, whether it be it's triggering us on a personal level, a spiritual level, an emotional level, a belief level, right? When we're in that space that we're already charged, oftentimes we're not open to listening. And what happens is, more times than not, people are coming from the same perspective. It's just their choice of words and their need to be heard gets in the way of them stepping back and listening and creating a space of deep understanding and compassion. And so I want you to think about, Yvette, awesome. Yes, it's totally making sense. Good morning, Sheena. I carefully curate my social media. I'm careful where I get my news. Yeah, and so one of the things, I mean, I'm a big believer. I don't watch the news. I don't read a newspaper because the news, the agenda on the news is to sell papers, is to sell media, is to sell marketing, it's to sell ads, it's to sell these things. And there has been research that shows that there's 63% or something like that more engagement when you have negative news. So most news channels are trying to stir the pot. They're trying to get people because that's what sells. And so when you go out there and you're reading all these things, know that the slant on everything is always going to be even more aggressive, more of a negative space, because that's what's going to draw people in to have that conversation. And what happens is, because this is the, are you part of the problem or part of the solution, people get sucked into that negativity, right? They get sucked into the fight. They want to, like, okay, let's, put up the dukes. We're gonna swing. We're gonna take our few punches. We're gonna make sure that we're heard. And what happens is we're just feeding into that space instead of taking a step back to say, okay, what is the issue at hand? And what is it about this issue that really doesn't sit well with me? And instead of pushing against, again, it's that resistance that we've talked about so many times. If ever there's a push or a pull, if you feel like you got to push something, if you feel like you got to be heard in this space, what happens is you're fighting into that resistance, right? And I love, there's, I don't know if you've seen this, it talks about, the person that feels like they have to be the loudest isn't the person that's going to win the argument. It's the person that actually drops in and gets quieter, because you don't need to raise your voice. You don't need to play into that resistance. You don't need to keep letting that negative energy kind of, percolate and perpetuate. What you can do is you can take a different stance and say, okay, if this isn't okay, then let's talk about how we create a solution. How do we come together to put all of our energy? And so what happens instead is everybody's putting their energy into the very thing they don't want, which all that's doing is manifesting more of that energy they don't want. It's actually feeding. Good morning, Maria. It's feeding that space of exactly what you don't want. And so let me see what the rest of you are saying. You met, I don't watch the news either. No, it's a cesspool. So social media most of the time. While politics as a practice have become personal due to all the wrong energies and not a mechanism of community. Absolutely, Mateo, I couldn't agree more. Ego-driven people are asleep in any party that only look for confirmation bias and are not based on the roots of issues of what requires suspension self. This means it's easier to say something not true or that confirms a party line instead of rational analysis. Anger and frustration come from the reality and complexity being greater than the capability or willingness to spend ego to focus on together. Yeah, because honestly, I'm the big belief. And here's the thing. Think about even, and again, I'm not going to have a big charged up political conversation this morning, but I do want you to think about where we've gotten to this state in our own politics. And I mean, our politicians, even when they're running for office, do they stand more on their own merits and what they're for, or do they spend all of their time attacking their opponent? And so what happens is, and people don't understand that sometimes the reason that the opponent and the candidate you don't want ends up being the one that gets voted in is because everybody's been saying, I don't want that candidate, I don't want that candidate. And all they do is talk about how much they hate that candidate instead of focusing on the energy on the candidate that actually speaks to the agenda that they want to move forward. And so it plays into every space of our life. What we focus on, that which we give energy to is going to grow and expand. That which we don't is going to die and go away. And so if we keep putting our energy into the very things we don't want, if we keep putting our energy into the things that are, the things that are triggering us and that are resistance and that are things that are going to continue to destroy, what you perceive to be the fabric of our country, or you perceive to be, what you believe in your own moral code of conducts. And if there's something that's violating that and we keep playing into that energy, all we're doing is exasperating that situation. And I know it gets hard sometimes because it gets really easy to get sucked into that conversation. And like I said, I went out and I totally agree. And, watching Call to Courage, and you listen to Brene talk about how social media can be the cesspool of humanity. Absolutely. And I think it's also a place for a lot of people to cop out. It's easy to have a kind of conversation because honestly, good morning, Preston, real conversations are not happening. They're just not happening on social media. It's one side, a little slant. That being said, it's just all of this negative energy. The energy that was out there this weekend was incredible. Actually, it's been out there the last couple of weeks, has gotten to be really, really dense, really, really heavy. And I feel like, right now in Austin, there's this, humidity that just came through. We've got some storms and everything. And it's that air, that very kind of oppressed, very heavy energy. And when I look at my feed and I look at, these are people, because I've done a great job of vetting out my feed on social media, because I'm out there because it is a way for me to continue to connect with all of you and have these conversations. So I've really curated my social media, and people that usually aren't getting sucked into that space are so charged up and getting sucked into that space. And it really had me reflect this weekend around how much are we being part of the solution versus how much we're adding the charge to the problem. And so I really wanted to bring in some conversation this morning as we think about how we're going to start our week, right? How we're going to be mindful and how we're going to be purposeful and intentional about our role as a leader, how we stand up and how we're taking personal responsibility. Are you getting sucked into some of those conversations where you're actually adding energy that's just charging that resistance? Or are you taking a step back to say, you know what, I don't want to talk about the anti-war movement. I want to talk about the pro-peace opportunities. And am I really shifting around? I need to stop pushing against what I don't want. I need to keep pushing against things, because if you're using words like I don't like, I don't want, I hate, this is, think about your language and your mindset when you're seeing things, your body, your resistance, or are you like, okay, this, I see that, and I choose to move myself in this space instead? Are you moving towards what you want to open up as a bigger conversation, as a solution? And are you allowing yourself to be influenced and surround yourself with people in that space? Mateo, yeah, post is not activism, right? Activity requires action, committed thoughts into action, absolutely. Yvette, you are in my head. This is something I've been thinking about, and you're saying what I'm thinking. I have so been trying to simply put positive energy out there. Yes, I've noticed your posts, Yvette. They've been amazing. And that is, people talk about, oh, you just want to have positivity in light of. I'm like, yes, and I want an anchor point. I want a space of, because, and so I see there are a lot of people who are hungry for positive energy. Absolutely. Because here's the thing as well. While there are some big issues going on, good morning, Jeff. While there are some big issues going on, there's also some really amazing things going on in the world. And what happens is when all of the energy is focused on these issues, when all of the energy is focused on what's broken, what's wrong, what's messed up, what sucks, what's like the shitstorm going on, we lose sight of all of the things that are beautiful and amazing about humanity. And we lose sight of all of the things that are really important and powerful, and where, somebody, this is why I don't watch the news, because they don't highlight when somebody does something good for someone. All they do is highlight the shitstorm stuff, right? And so think about that. It takes each one of us to step up into a space to say, how do I choose? And I don't care if people have been calling me this since I was a kid, right? Pollyanna Sunshine. Great. And I love that movie, and I know I've referenced it before. I love that she had the GLAAD game, right? People were going through all kinds of different things. Even when she fell off the roof or the tree, when she was trying to sneak back into the house and was paralyzed, the town came back and rallied and helped her, put her in a spirit that said, what can you look forward to? What are you glad about? What are you, these things? And it's a perspective. Aww. That makes me so happy. Of course I noticed what you guys are doing out there. I do want to see the messages that you're putting out there, because it takes 1 + 1, which, by the way, 1 and 1 isn't 2 in this equation. 1 and 1 is 20, because for every one of us that gets out there and chooses to step into a different space, to have a different conversation, to be a positive force for change, to look at where there's opportunity for solutions, we create a ripple effect. It goes back to that butterfly effect, right? It goes back to that space where it's kind of a domino. Because Yvette, for every person in your network, there's people that are saying, oh, I needed that today. And then they're going out and they're sharing that, right? And so you all show up with me every morning. We have these conversations, and there's nuggets that you take out of these conversations, whatever is your space, whatever feels like you're connected to, and you're showing up differently as a result. You're having a different conversation as a result. That's where the magic happens. So 1 and 1 is a 20 equation, right? And so when we choose, and I have leaders in corporate organizations that'll say, well, it's not like 40 people can change anything. So, we've had a culture that's been this way and I'm like, and that's the mindset right there. 40 people absolutely can change. All it takes is 1. And then it takes another one to show up. And it's like that video where the guy is dancing and making a fool of himself at the concert in the park, right? And everybody's making fun of him because he's out there and he's kind of rocking around. And then next thing you know, someone else comes up and jumps and joins him. And then there's 5. And if you watched Brene Brown, The Call to Courage, she says, she watched her video go viral, and at first it was 3, then it was 4, then it was 5 million, then it was 6. The power of standing up. And here's the thing I want you guys to keep coming back to. Positive energy has a much more powerful force than negative energy. We get sucked in easy, and most of the time it's because we've gone unconscious, because we're not being present, because we're not being intentional about how we choose to show up. So we get sucked in because we're lazy and we're tired and we don't want to take responsibility. And when we choose to step up into that positive space, when we're in a space of love and gratitude and joy and belonging, when we show up in those energies, it requires less people to show up to help move that energy forward. And we have the opportunity with everything that's going on to choose whether or not we want to get sucked into the shitstorm and sucked into the garbage conversation and focused on all the stuff we hate. That word is going around like crazy, and this anger and this angst and this energy is just so debilitating for people. Or we can show up and say, you know what, I want to have a different conversation. I know that's going on. And in light of that, I want to actually focus on what's going well. I want to focus on how we have an opportunity to step forward and do something different. I want us to connect together and build communities again, right? Become connected, have those courageous conversations. And that's a responsibility that lands on every one of us. And so I want you to think about that. Elaine, I was stalked at one time, so it has been very difficult for me to put myself out on social media. Many people do not understand why I not want to be part of it, but the negativity keeps me. Yes, and Elaine, I completely understand that, and I'm not going to dismiss that at all, but I want you to realize that the more you allow yourself to be afraid in that space, the more you're playing into the energy of what you had with that stalker in the first place. And so I want you to think about it's no matter what happens, it's if somebody was robbed, somebody broke into your house, if you allow yourself to shut down, if you allow yourself to not have a voice because you're afraid, you are letting that perpetrator win. And so that also is an energy where are you creating, and so please don't think that I'm dismissing the pain in that or dismissing what happened inside of that. I absolutely am not. I understand that, and know that every moment that you're playing into the fear, you're contributing to part of the problem instead of stepping up into the solution. I have haters that show up constantly. There's people, even coming on this morning, there was a part of me that my stomach started to churn. I'm like, I'm about to open up a big conversation. I know people might get triggered based on what I'm putting out this morning, because people don't like to get called out, have to take responsibility that says I'm being part of the problem. I've had to do some inventory for myself to even have this conversation this morning. Yesterday, I spent the entire day really doing work on myself from a spiritual perspective to ask myself, am I standing in congruence to have a conversation that says, am I being part of the solution or am I being part of the problem? And do I get it right all the time? No. And so I want you to think about when you allow fear to paralyze you in any way, shape, or form, you are feeding into that energy. You are allowing that space to be what's building instead of saying, because anytime we focus, and it's like me, I mean, I had a lawsuit in my business. I have had other things go on. If I keep focusing on, oh my gosh, what if that happens again? I don't stand up and show up for the people that need me. And so we can either shrink back because there's a what if that might happen, and it might happen. And then what you do is you trust that you will be given whatever you need to move through that if it happens. But anytime we focus on those what ifs that are that sky is falling, what if this happens, what if, we are calling that to us. And so, Elaine, I say that with a lot of deep love and respect, and I know you very well. And I say that to say, consider perhaps how you are continuing to charge that space and how you're contributing to the problem versus maybe stepping into a space to say, I choose not to allow that incident to stop me from standing in my voice when I know that I have something I want to say, when I know that there's something of value. Because here's the thing, and I want you to think about the 3 questions I've shared with you before. This is, good morning, Lisa. And I agree with Martha. I respect your decision. And it is a decision. You can choose where and how you show up. And know that if you're making a decision because it's fear that's driving you, you're not playing full out. You're not playing in a space that is you belonging to you first and you honoring your voice. You are allowing someone else in the fear of what might happen shut you down. And so again, personal choice, whether you're on social media or not, don't care. It's what your decision process was that arrived at that space. Because when we allow someone else to stop us from being who we are handing our power over in that moment. Your empowerment means to be, power from within. And when we allow someone who's unqualified to take away our voice, to take away our dreams, to take away our ability to show up and create effective change, we have now handed our power over. And so I do say that with so much love and respect, because I hope all of you, as we're digging into this, you see where that can show up. Because fear in itself is not a bad thing. It's when we let fear be the thing that decides for us, because you can be brave or you can allow fear to win. You can't be both. And when you are not stepping forward, if you know that there's something you need to say or that you want to say, I want you to think about who's not being served right now. I want you to think about whose permission you're taking away. And I want you to think about who you're not letting shine your light. Because when you allow yourself to shrink down because of the fear of what might happen, you are not stepping into your power, and you are not stepping into space to say, I belong to me first. Because when you do that, there are people that are going to, and I get, there's a safety thing in that. Good morning, Paul. And so, Elaine, thank you. And so just know that I'm coming from a place of deep love and respect and compassion, because I want you to continue to push yourself into space to say, am I choosing courage over comfort? Or am I choosing comfort over courage? And am I choosing to allow a fear? And that's a real fear. And again, not dismissing that, because there's a safety thing. I've had a stalker, and I've had a stalker a couple times. And there's a safety in that. And I'm also not going to check my back on every turn. I'm going to be alert. I'm going to be aware. And I'm going to know that I have tools if something were to happen, but I'm not going to shut myself down and become a hermit because someone violated a space, because someone chose to step into a space where at that point I lost my power. I'm going to reclaim my power back, and I'm going to stand up even stronger because of it. And so it's something I want you to consider, all of you. And I know I'm responding to Elaine directly, but I want you to think about that. I want you to think about where you're playing small because fear, or because there's a story you keep writing over and over again. That's that what if. And are you contributing to the problem, or are you contributing to the solution? So Elaine, yes, I understand what you are saying. I'm choosing to put my energy elsewhere. There you go. And it's a choice. And this is the whole thing. Whatever you decide is your choice. And just as long as we take responsibility for knowing that it is a choice, and that we're showing up in that way, and that we then have to own the consequences of our choice, because every choice we make has an outcome. There's a cause and effect relationship for everything. And so when you realize that and understand that, you take a different responsibility. So Mateo, Fierce Conversations by Susan Scott. Yes, great book. I committed a couple years ago to stop allowing myself to contribute to circular conversations, mastering myself to stop contributing to growing a negative energy charged pools of relationship. As a leader of people and solutions to complexity, has been wonderfully potent to be able to have fierce conversations that are respectful, focused on goals, and real changes for life. Be a beacon. I absolutely agree with that. And so I know I'm having a really big conversation with you guys this morning, and what a way to start a Monday, right? Woohoo! But like I said, this weekend got to be really intense for me as I was going. I absolutely had to check out of social media completely, and it just really got me thinking about where our opportunity is. And as leaders, if we choose to take on that responsibility to know that leadership is everyone's choice, leadership is everyone's responsibility, and leadership really is effectively a team sport, and it requires all of us stepping up and playing at our highest and best level. It doesn't mean that we're always going to agree with people. No. Doesn't mean that we're going to have conversations where we get our ass kicked and our ass handed to us, and that we're going to get, face down in the arena. Yes. And I love that even Brene says, look, to have the courageous conversations means you're going to mess it up. You're not going to know what to say all the time. And it means showing up and listening in a way that maybe we haven't listened before. Maybe it's understanding and getting past the hurt and the fear and the pain to really understand where people's point of view is coming from, and then together arrive at a solution that is that win-win-win. It's not a win for you and a win for me. It's a win for you, me, and everyone that's affected by that decision. And we have such a powerful opportunity right now, because here's the thing, and here's how you can choose to look at this. You can look at the fact that right now there is a massive shitstorm going on. True statement. And you can also look at it as there's an opportunity for incredible healing, unlike any other time in the history of humanity. And to think about our opportunity for how we can play an active and purposeful and intentional role in that, think about what that could look like. And so you get to decide, do you want to stay as someone who's continuing to magnify and emphasize and build the shitstorm? Or do you want to be somebody that's building the side of healing instead and opening up the bigger conversations? And so, I truly respect all of you so much. I honor the fact that you show up every day and have these conversations. I get this is a big message this morning, and I get that there's things that you may be processing through and that you might get triggered. And I know I've said this before, but it warrants saying again, if you're finding yourself triggered in some of this question, and this is a question I'm putting out there, I'm not telling you what to do, this is a question. If you're finding yourself triggered in it, know that there's 3 choices you have in that space. One is you can make a choice that says, I don't want to go into that space. That's not comfortable for me. I don't want to have that conversation. That's not my arena. I don't want to be there. And you can walk away from it. And you can cop out. You can say no. You can say that's not for me. Fair enough. That's your choice. You also can get really curious about what's showing up for you as we have these conversations, and lean into it and really explore where the story is coming from that's got you so triggered. What is it that you're holding on to? Is it fear? Is it a belief? Is it a story? Is it something else, an experience, whatever? You can start to peel that back to understand where that's effectively coming from. And the third thing is once you've done some of that work, you can simply say, you know what, I'm good. This doesn't affect me anymore. This is just water off a duck's back. It just, I don't need to be in this space at all because I'm so focused on this other space instead. And you have those choices. And so know that. Oh, wonderful. I'm glad to hear that, Yvette. Very relevant message. And I think in light of where we're at, we have the choice every day to decide how we choose to show up, how we choose to serve, and how we choose to take personal responsibility. And part of the shitstorm, in my opinion, that's happening is because people are refusing to take that responsibility. They're refusing to own their stuff, to own their piece of the conversation. And that is why this morning it was, all weekend long, I've been waiting. I've been like excited and a little bit hesitant. And notice I chose to be brave this morning because this is an uncomfortable conversation. Do I feel like I got it perfectly right? Absolutely not. Do I know that I've got my own work to do inside this space? Absolutely, which is why I'm being so transparent with all of you, is because it's only when we open that up to say, I don't know the right answer. I don't know what the solution is. I do know, though, playing in this shitstorm is not the answer. I know that in order for us to move anything forward and have the healing that we need to have a different conversation. We need to open up access to something that's going to allow us to lean in and be more vulnerable. I know we need to get courageous and brave in those conversations. And I know it scares me just like it scares the rest of you. And being scared is not an option for me. Being scared says yes, and because courage says you do that thing that scares you, even though, right? The fear shows up and you move through it instead of letting it paralyze you. And so my challenge for you this week, or my invitation for all of you, is to start to explore where you're really being part of the solution and where maybe inadvertently you're being part of the problem. And so we have an opportunity, every one of us, myself included, and I commit to that. And this is my declaration, is that I'm going to continue to stand in my voice. I'm going to continue to stand up and be more purposeful and be more present. And I'm going to open up access to listen more, because this is an opportunity to focus on the healing that's needed and let go of any participation in the shitstorm and any of that energy and what's going on there. I don't want to play there. I want to focus on the pro-peace rally, right? I don't want to fight in the anti-war space. And so as things are showing up for all of you guys, if you need something, if something's getting really kind of stuck, let me know. Let me know if you're getting triggered. I'm happy to help you move through that. Like I said, I wanted to put this question out there. I think we have an opportunity to really challenge ourselves to be more courageous. And I won't say assumption, but I guess it is an assumption for all of you showing up every morning with me is that you want to be in the arena, that you are looking to step forward and reclaim a bigger, more fulfilled aspect of your life, and you have a desire to create some effective change in the world. And whatever that might look like in your family and your community on a more global scale, it requires us really managing where and how we're putting our energy, and whether or not we're choosing to be part of the solution or still be part of the problem. So I love you all so much. Thank you for being so open and transparent this morning. I love the comments. I love how you support each other. And I love how you're willing to put some of your vulnerability out. A lot of you don't know each other other than being in this chat together. So I truly honor all of you for showing up this way. We're going to continue to have some conversations. We're going to bring in other things. And but for this morning, for today, I want you to think about, are you being part of the problem, or are you choosing to step forward and be part of the solution? So just know I love you all dearly. I will see you tomorrow at 7:30. Go out there and stand in your voice, belong to you first, and know that it starts with you saying yes to yourself. I love you. I will talk to you tomorrow.